Welcome to Behind the Black Belt, a podcast about the people and black belts of BJJ.
Welcome to Behind the Black Belt. I'm your host, Rich, and my guest today is third degree BJJ black belt Rodney Ellis. Now, Rodney is the head BJJ coach of the Southern Cross Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Cronulla, Australia, and he is an official OG of the Australian BJJ scene. He has spent a heck of a lot of time in Brazil, training at some of the best BJJ academies going around. Rod also competed in professional Shudo, which is MMA in Tokyo, as well as being part of the Nova União. Oh, I've said it completely wrong. I'm so sorry.
Good, mate.
You say it properly, Rod.
Nova União.
Nova União? Oh my God.
Nova União.
There we go. Professional MMA team. My dearest apologies. And he has an impressive BJJ competition experience. All you have to do is get into YouTube, type in his name, and you will see some of the elites and some of the giants that he has competed against. Rodney Ellis, welcome. Welcome to Behind the Black Belt, mate, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Rich.
Now, mate, we have got a lot to cover. You have got a depth of experience on the BJJ scene, mate, so I'm really looking forward to getting to know you and really getting into it. So why don't you get us started off, Rod? Why don't you start us off with where were you born and where were you raised?
So my gym, I'm actually in my gym now, as you can see, and I was born about 1 kilometre up the road in Caringbah Hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And yeah, being the true hobbit that I am, I live 1 kilometre from there now, and my gym's here. So, yeah, I'm a hobbit, born and raised here in the Cronulla.
Fantastic. And Cronulla's in the Shire, yeah?
Yeah.
And why don't you, for those, so the Shire is southeast Sydney?
Yeah, South Sydney, yeah.
South Sydney. Why don't you tell all those that haven't been to the Shire? I mean, it's famous, right? Everyone hears about the Shire. Why is it so famous?
We don't really like talking about it. We want to keep it quiet. The tourists come, they go to Manly and Bondi. It's great.
Yeah, okay.
It's just, I guess, nice in that it's not overdeveloped yet. Sadly, it's becoming more overdeveloped, but it's still got parks. The beaches aren't as crowded. You can still drive and then get a park at the beach. You can take your dog to the beach. It's just a little bit more laid back still.
Absolutely. And that's classic. All right. Well, what I didn't tell you is we'll edit some of this podcast afterwards, mate. I'll cut that out so you don't get too many people coming down the Shire if that helps out. All right. So you're born and bred in the Shire, raised there as well. Where did you go to school?
Newington College.
Okay. It's
a private school. My dad was a workaholic. We weren't rich in the sense of the word, but he worked hard. And, he was up before I got up in the morning and, he sent me to a private school and, it was interesting because I was probably the smallest kid at the school. You have 200 boys line up, and I was probably 198, 199 for school photos. So
yeah, right.
That kind of led me into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And what did your dad do?
He was just an insurance. Just when your house burnt down, he'd be the person who went around and just had a look at it and say, well, there was a fire or if there was a flood or something like that. And he used to work 12-hour days, and he worked really hard.
And was he born and bred in the Shire as well?
No, Hurstville. So just north of the Shire.
Okay. But a Sydney sider his whole life as well?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And was mum in the picture at all, Rod?
Yeah, mum. She was born in Grafton, so up in the north coast.
Yeah, and what did she do?
She was a zoologist.
Okay, wow, okay.
Kangaroos and all those kind of things. So, yeah, I grew up watching nature documentaries and seeing different koalas and, different kangaroos and wallabies and all those kind of things. So it was quite interesting.
A zoologist. So where does a zoologist work? So
at the university.
Okay.
University of New South Wales. So I used to go on school holidays, go in there and see bats and say all sorts of marsupials. And it was really interesting growing up. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have any sort of cool stories that your mum showed you some crazy exotic animal or something like that when you were a kid?
No, she used to go to Broken Hill and shoot them and then study their diet.
Yeah, okay. Not what you're expecting a zoologist to do, but no, that's...
Well, yeah, it's probably like studying what they eat. And so you study like, all the farming and so forth. When they clear the lands, the kangaroos are considered a pest now because they come and eat the crops.
Okay.
Studying, what they eat and so you can look after them and conserve and consume them, preserve them.
Preserve them, yeah. No, that makes sense. And any siblings as well growing up?
I got one younger sister.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So what was your kind of childhood like, mate, growing up in the Shire? You know, were you a bit of a rebel, a bit of a nerd? How was your upbringing?
Definitely a nerd.
Yeah.
Can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an Apple II when they first came out. It's going back a while, and yeah, like computers when they were evolving. I was the kid at school who used to copy computer games and stuff on the old 5 1/4 floppy disks,
Wow.
and yeah, I was the nerd, definitely the nerd. So when I went to Newington in high school, it's a big rugby school and stuff, and I wanted to play rugby, but I was just never any good at it. But I stuck at it. But I was kind of the small kid with the big mouth.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, that kind of led me to get into martial arts. But I
Yeah.
remember I used to do nippers down at Wanda, which is one of the beaches here in Cronulla. And I hated it because I was so small and I used to lose all the races.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do jiu-jitsu, but mum wouldn't let me quit nippers until I got a certain badge. And so, yeah, that was when I started doing jiu-jitsu when I was about 12.
Yeah. Okay. And so because IT is something that you'll go on to later in life and do quite well at. So what were you doing? So you weren't at school. What did you have as a pastime? Was it all about computers?
Pretty much, yeah. It was, I'd finish school and I'd come home and I'd start. I think I was writing my first programs at about 14 or 15 years old.
Wow. And this is like in the 90s, right?
Yeah, in the 90s, yeah. Black and green and black and orange screens.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And what was the fascination with computers back then? Because it wasn't sort of being pushed down anyone's throat. It was something you had to get into yourself.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I think Dad just bought me one when I was, in primary school. I said one of those it was an Apple II Euro Plus. I remember it now.
Yeah, okay.
And there was some games and some other kids at school, and we used to just get games and copy them and share them around. And one thing leads to another, and you start learning, algebra and stuff at school, and you start programming, and it becomes fun.
And for the young listeners out there, what Rodney's describing is not just he had an app that he was able to open and double click a couple things. We're talking about, MS DOS. We're talking about if you want to load a game, you had the discs that you had to start the disc. Oh no, sorry, the tape cassettes. You had to start the tape cassette, all that sort of old school stuff. That's geez, there's not many people that still remember that stuff nowadays, I can tell you.
I actually still got an old 3 1/4 floppy drive upstairs.
No, really?
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
I don't know. It's just I've got all this old code that is sentimental, and
That's so cool.
I've got it.
Yeah, I remember when I was very young, I was with my uncle who was into computers as well. And he worked for a department and they were upgrading the systems and they had to get rid of all their 5.5s and 3.5 floppy disks, 5.5 or whatever it was. And we just had a box of literally hundreds and we had a massive bin at the tip and it was just frisbeeing, just ninja stars and frisbees, just throwing these things out. I just imagine explaining that story to my kids nowadays and they just look at me really confused. Like, why'd you throw the USBs out? No, these weren't USBs. they were
It's very like someone had a 3D printer and they said, oh, you 3D printed the save button on the machine.
Yes, I saw that. That's classic. It's not a save button. It means something to other people. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So you then go into high school and any sort of passions change? You're still into computers at that stage?
Yeah, like being as a kid, I was in a sporty family. Like Dad always made sure I played sport, like cricket in the summer, rugby in the winter. And, I suppose as a kid, my goal was always to play for the Wallabies. But
yeah, cool.
I kind of touched on I trained hard, but I was just too small. Even a scrum half, I was still too small and too slow. Okay. It wasn't until I got to about 17, 18 years old, I actually grew out and filled up a bit. So.
Yeah, no worries. So when you were playing sport, you mentioned cricket, you mentioned you did nippers as well. You mentioned you did rugby, but you wanted to do jiu-jitsu. So tell us about when you first heard of jiu-jitsu and what sort of drew you to that.
So I guess in the early 90s, I think it was the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yes.
They were just coming into the scene big time. And then there was a movie called American Ninja.
Oh my God. Yes.
Michael Dudikoff. And it was all the Steven Seagal films.
Yeah.
So it was this huge, I guess, ninja craze going on. And so because I said I was a small kid, big mouth at a private school, I got pushed around a bit, which I kind of deserved. But my sister did gymnastics at Sylvania Heights. And So I said I want to do martial arts and stuff, and Mum came home and said they don't have ninjutsu, but they have jujitsu. And it's a different kind of style of jiu-jitsu. It was more, old school, closer to Aikido in a way, and bits of karate, and yeah, it was just up the road at Sylvania Heights.
Yep.
So I couldn't do it until I got a certain badge at Nippers because I just had too many other commitments on. But I remember my first day that we got there, and the class I think was on a Friday night, and Mum drove me to the car park, and there's this old guy. I was like, old, in his 50s.
Yeah.
In my 40s, I shouldn't say that. But yeah, and he got out of the car, and then I was really shy back then too. I couldn't even say my name. That was one thing I got teased about. I couldn't pronounce R's.
Yeah, right.
So I was really shy, and Mum took me up to look, is this the jiu-jitsu? And his name was Gordon, and he took me under his wing.
Yep.
And he was the best instructor I could have had at that time.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you started doing this jiu-jitsu with him as a young kid, and what sort of, you're influenced by Hollywood and movies?
Definitely
and
Hollywood
stuff
movies.
As well?
Yeah, like, I mean, I was what, 13, 12,
Oh
13
man, you were naming movies that are just strumming my heartstrings. So
Perfect Weapon with Jeff Speakman. That one.
Oh, yes, it was amazing. And so to talk us through, so this style of jiu-jitsu it's not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You made that clear before. And how long did you stick with this martial arts for?
So I would have been at 12 or 13 when I started, and at least until my 20s. So a good 7.
Oh wow, okay, a long time.
Yeah, and also so Van Damme films, of course, they were huge.
Yeah.
Bloodsport, kickboxer. So yeah, Gordon, he came through like in I suppose the 60s and 70s, learning the jiu-jitsu that was around back then, and trying a lot of karate and wrestling. Anything Gordon could do to get involved and to improve his knowledge, he was into. So
Yeah,
it was a good environment, to come up through. And he always encouraged me to go in tournaments, karate tournaments, judo tournaments, any kind of tournament he'd put me in. And it was different back then too, because he would take myself and the other boys to tournaments. So you'd go to Mum would drive me to the club in the morning, the dojo in the morning, and Gordon would drive myself and a few other boys to like Central Coast and stuff. We compete, and that was like at least once a month. It was a tournament like that. So I think for me, for the first 5 years, I didn't want to fight.
Yeah.
But Gordon kept taking us and kept believing in us, and just persistence.
That's fantastic. And he sounds, I speak to a lot of black belts, and a lot of them had this initial grounding in what you'd say is a traditional martial arts.
Yeah.
Not many of them talk about it being as flexible as what you're describing Gordon did, learning from other martial arts and sort of piecing it all together. So, almost ahead of his time, if you will.
You what? Yeah. Very open-minded.
That's fantastic. So talk us through, Rod, this growth you're going through now in a martial arts world whilst you're going through high school. Were the two complementary to each other at all?
No, not so much, because I mean, when you're still at that age where size matters.
Yeah.
And if you look at your typical rugby second rower, they were twice my size. So jiu-jitsu, it takes a long time, I think, for you to start to become competent and for that confidence to come through, especially when I was losing every tournament. Like I'm not every tournament, every fight. I didn't get past the first round for like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So so the confidence wasn't really there to stand up for myself at school.
I mean, that's a long time, man, to not get a win up, or to just have your confidence knocked down over and over again. What kept you driving at such a young age? Teenagers quit stuff at the drop of a hat. How did you keep going back and just going and going?
Again, probably put it down to Gordon.
Yeah.
Just just knew how to encourage you and to keep your spirits high, and he's just the perfect mentor for me at that time.
That's perfect. That's great. All right. So talk us through, Rod, you hit the end of high school. When you're going through high school, what is the future for you? What did you want to be when you grew up, and what was motivating you?
I'll put it this way. I used to do French at school.
Yeah.
So I did French for 6 years. I can barely speak a word because in my French classes, I used to do my maths homework, which I did 3-unit maths, my 3-unit computing homework. I did all this stuff in my French class, so I didn't have to go do it when I got home. So it was always going to be some kind of computing, some kind of mathematics thing.
Yeah, okay.
Always my future.
Yeah.
And I just kind of fell into jiu-jitsu by chance as a profession. So
Yeah. Okay. You finish high school, and then what's the next step from there?
So towards the end of high school at Gordon's dojo one night, there was a Greek guy kicking a punching bag. And I said, "Who's that?" And someone said, "Oh, that's Larry Papadopoulos."
Yeah.
So that's when I first met Larry.
Hmm.
And when I finished high school, I started studying at a computer programming course. I think it was on Market Street. And because I was in the afternoons and it was too hard to get back to Tremont Gordon, Larry's dojo was on Pitt Street, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
So I'd knock off, I think this course went from 1 till 6 in the afternoon. I used to knock off about 4-ish because I got the work done by then. And then I'd go across to Larry's and I'd train. So that's where I kind of made that transition across from the traditional martial art, if you like, into more MMA jiu-jitsu.
Okay. And
About
so,
that time, Larry was just getting into pancras.
okay. So for those that aren't familiar, tell us a bit about Larry and sort of the martial arts that he was into back then.
Larry's probably the most underrated martial artist in Australia.
Okay.
Just the amount of knowledge that man has, it's just incredible. I see him teaching a kickboxing class to put his gi on and teach a traditional jiu-jitsu class, and then accredited feeler referee, third degree jiu-jitsu black belt. And I guess in the late 90s, he was already fighting, I suppose, what we call today mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
In Japan, in Pancras, he fought Ken Shamrock.
Yeah. So this is a form of pancration. Is that right? Called pancras.
Yeah, I guess that's where the name comes from. Yeah, Pancras.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is pancras, which is a promotion that was in Japan, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
And if you look it up, this is the ones that these are the videos I grew up with. You know, you're seeing the Bass Ruttons, you're seeing the Ken Shamrocks, Frank Shamrocks, the dudes with the tiny shorts, but the massive the massive leg pads, or not pads. I'm not sure.
And about this time too, you're missing Bass Rutten. Like I remember Bass coming out to train with Larry, would have been about 97, 98. Bass Rutten came out and trained with Larry for a few months.
Yeah, right. And did you get to meet Bass Rutten?
Yeah, many times, yeah.
Oh man, what's he like?
Hilarious.
Yeah, I could imagine.
If you want to laugh, hang around Bass Rutten.
I feel like I'm a personal friend of him because I reckon I've listened to tens of hours of his striking MP3s. You know, before there was even iPhones, I remember just playing the CD. And yeah, even in those.
It's that video where he teaches self-defense in the pub and he's gold.
Yeah, it's so cool.
That's him. He's not acting. He's not playing up. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
It's quite funny.
Yeah. All right. So back to Larry. So he's training in all these different styles.
Yeah.
You rock up to his gym and what do you see and what draws you to it?
I mean, of course, I met him through Gordon, so we already knew each other, and yeah, his gym was just so close to where I was learning at the time, like computer programming. It was just all convenient, and I guess I became more his student, less Gordon's student at that time. But
yeah,
I was still trying to Gordon once a week, but Larry 5 times a week.
Was there any sort of politics or animosity there?
Oh, no way.
No. That's so good to hear. Again, I do a lot of these interviews, and there's always a transition from the traditional to the let's say more contemporary or different martial arts. And the good thing is most times it ends up sounding really good, which to me speaks absolute volumes to the coaches who truly believe in the student. You know what I mean? To say, hey, what's best for you is best for me, and go and train with this guy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good. Fantastic. And so what style of training were you doing back then? Describe to us, you'd rock up for training, and what are you doing?
So long ago. Would have been more, I suppose, what you call today MMA. Like we used to probably start with skipping and start with some kickboxing drills. And then we were kind of all learning jiu-jitsu at the time. Like if you had a blue belt back then, you were considered, like a black belt today.
Yeah.
I think John Will may or may not have had his black by then. I'm not sure what year he got it, but none of us at that time were greater than BJJ. We were just, literally trying to learn from videotapes.
Yeah.
Going to seminars, trying to put it all together.
Yeah. And were there competitions back then, like grappling
Kind of a
competitions?
more mixed of like judo with karate, which point sparring mixed with judo is how I'd explain it.
Yeah. Okay.
You look up today, I think it's called sports jiu-jitsu
Okay.
is what you can call it. But yeah, there were those kind of tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so you're training there with Larry, and from a career perspective, where are you at with your computing?
I think 90, 98 or 97, I got my first job on a help desk.
Okay.
And just, like 9 to 5, just on your help desk, like learning to program as a part-time. Like you can't really go straight into programming. Like you pretty much always step from help desk, so someone was up, oh, my computer's frozen, and you turn it off and on again type thing to then start progressing into programming. So
Yeah.
I would have been working from about 1998 and then 1 year off between. Like I literally went from school to study to work. I didn't go to university or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. And is it satisfying, sort of, for someone who has been into computers and maths for such a long time, to then get into a profession? The help desk may not have been the best one, but was it satisfying? Were you like, hey, this is?
Yeah, well, it's like, I say you had to get started, and
yeah, okay,
yeah, so it gave me the time. It was kind of closer to Larry's gym. Like it was at botany, so
yeah,
not as far as here in Cronulla to get in there and stuff. So I could kind of get to botany and then get into town to train, and so yeah, it was all good.
awesome. And then what's next, Rodney? Towards your sort of, when you get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu proper.
All right. Here's where I guess the fun starts.
Okay, here we go.
So in Larry's at that time, I meet a man named Eduardo, and
Yep.
he was 3 years older than me, and he's out here learning English and all the rest of it, and he started training at Larry's because he said he saw an ad or something to say, jiu-jitsu, and how do I explain it? I guess we're about the same age.
Yep.
I didn't really have that many friends because like where I went to school was more based in the city and stuff like that. So he didn't really know anyone. We started going out and become best mates.
Yeah.
And I think 99, or was it 98? 98. He went back to Brazil for a month and he said, come with us. So I was 19 years old and found myself in Rio for the first time.
Yeah, and describe that experience. That's got to be cool.
Get off. I think I arrived in Rio at about 6 p.m. So I don't know what the flights are now, but back when I was going a lot, it was you leave here about 8 o'clock in the morning on like a Saturday 8 o'clock, and you get there Saturday night at 6 p.m. because you kind of follow the sun.
Yeah.
So 6 p.m. You have a few drinks. Tired, but then go out and have a good night. So I remember my first night there, went to a nightclub, and the first thing I see is a fight. There's a massive brawl between these guys and punch on and stuff. But that was not my first night. But
Yeah, like, what have I done?
Yeah, but no, it was great. 19 years old in a foreign country, can't speak a word of the language.
Yep.
Real eye opener. Like never travelled overseas without mum and dad before.
Yeah.
It's
awesome. And then so he takes you to train in BJJ?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So back then, Eduardo at that time was a purple belt.
Okay.
So he was teaching at Larry's before he went. And we were training at Osvaldo Alves Academy in Copacabana Beach. So Osvaldo Alves is one of the grandmasters. I think he's 9th degree red belt at the moment.
Wow.
So yeah, we were training there. And I got my blue belt on that trip, which was like a proud moment.
Yeah.
And so Eduardo's coach, his name's Asej, and Asej again, knows old school, just really nice guys. Can't say enough good things about. I mean, Asej is kind of like God. He used to drive me all around Rio, take me all these tournaments, introduce me to everybody, and would not charge me a cent.
Wow.
In fact, he'd even buy me dinner. And I'm like, let me pay for dinner. He's like, no, you're in my house or you're in my city. I pay.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky in that I've met so many great people, and Eduardo and Asej are definitely in that group. So, yeah.
Okay, and so you get to this BJJ academy. It's your first pure BJJ academy
Mhm.
that you go to train to. What do you remember what your expectations were, and how close to reality that was?
Not really. No, I kind of it was a really small gym on Copacabana Beach, and there were a few stars, and I met Vitor Belfort.
Wow.
Fredson Pais Scholl was a purple belt.
Yeah.
Training with Fredson. I think Amori Batechi was there. He just won the world's black belt absolute 2 years earlier, so he's kind
Yeah.
of one of the names. But I didn't really know who these people were back then. It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah. Of course.
I didn't speak the language. I didn't really know anyone apart from Eduardo. Wherever Eduardo went, I would go.
Yeah.
Um, it was, yeah, it was also quick. Plus, it was carnival time as well, so there was only really a week or two of training, and then it was just massive party, and no, I can't remember any of that.
Yeah.
It's just,
And then
yeah, it was just such a blast.
and then at the end of that trip, you're awarded your blue belt.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that was a surprise, I assume.
Yeah, it was like, I guess that's why I still do old school gradings now. Like the idea of just one day you get, oh, here's your blue belt.
Yeah.
You remember it more than if you had to pass a test or if you got it at the end of the year.
Yeah, sure. And because I read about your story online, and it was because you weren't going there to get your blue belt. You weren't going there you were just going there for a bit of a holiday, and you happened to be
That's right. Like
training. And
Eduardo said, I'm going back to Rio for a month. Come with us. I'm like, yeah, all right. Why
yeah,
not?
yeah. And then and then when do things change? When are you like, hey, this is something I'm gonna keep on doing?
I suppose. Well, soon we came back, and for the next 18 months, I guess I kept working, and Eduardo was, teaching at Larry's and stuff, and we just so became really good mates. And then in 1999, he went back to Brazil permanently.
Yeah.
And then so I went back in '99 to spend another month there, and then he stayed, and then I came back, and I just went back to work. And 1999, 2000, for a computer programmer was a great year.
Oh yeah, yeah. I could imagine.
The .com boom was going up. There was the GST was about to be introduced, and there was a thing called the Y2k bug.
Yeah, I was about to say, were you the guy that fixed that Y2k bug?
No, I made a lot of money from it. And then, so then in 2000, I went back to Brazil because Eduardo was there, and another 6 weeks, I think, that time there, and just trained and all the rest of it, and then came back and worked at the Olympics. And that was another incredible experience. I got a job working at the wrestling and the judo at the 2000 Olympic Games.
Yeah, right. Wow, I did not know that. Tell us how did you get into that, and what did you do?
Just through connections. A man who's got his black belt now in Melbourne, Dan Toole, a Canadian guy. I knew him met him a couple of times. I forget how. It was in Melbourne or in Sydney, and I don't know how he got involved, but he somehow got a job working for IBM, and he said, "Look, we need IT people that understand the sport of judo and wrestling, so when the referee says start, stop, whatever, they can press the buttons." And it was a good little 3-month contract, and to actually watch the Olympics and wrestling and judo that close up, literally on the side of the mat, and it was all the combat sports together. So you watch the boxing and the wrestling and the weightlifting and the fencing. It was a really good time.
So first year Taekwondo was at the Olympics from memory was 2000. Is that right?
Don't know.
Oh, it wasn't you not involved in that aspect of it. It was more the judo.
Rich.
Sorry, mate. It is a long time ago. It's like 2 decades ago. I only know because I believe Lauren Burns won the gold for Taekwondo the first year it was in the Olympics, which was 2000s, and I always found her very attractive when I was a young teenager, and I have a signed book from her. So anyway, I was hoping you were going to go down that line, but that's fine. Yeah, so the wrestling and the judo at that stage, were these sports that you were familiar with in your training? I assume you were.
No, yeah, like not to a degree that I, consider myself an expert at them. But Larry was quite good at judo, and he was learning wrestling, and we had A few wrestling coaches at Boxing Works, Larry's gym. Igor from at Igor MMA, Big Igor, he was training at Larry's sometimes, and he competed at the 2000 games.
Yeah.
So yeah, I knew enough to say they wanted people to work that understood what was going on. So
yeah, that's a cool experience. That's really cool. All right, so talk us through outside of the Olympics. How's your professional career developing at this stage?
It's still going good. Sadly, I think I was earning too much money because I didn't really respect it.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the sad thing. It's like you're too young and earning good money, and so again, after working in the Olympics, I did a little bit of stuff around, like a little few things over summer, and 2001 went back to Brazil.
Yeah, right. Okay, so
every time I earned money, I just used it to go back to Brazil because I was really at the stage where I was teaching at Larry's. I got my purple 2001. I got my purple. So when you go get purple back then, it was again almost like black belt again now, where you were teaching, and it was more of a focus then, I guess.
And what keeps pulling you back to Brazil? What is the drive that makes you want to go back there and keep on training?
A few things. Like first of all, having Eduardo there meant that I didn't have to. I always lived at his apartment, so I didn't have to pay for accommodation or anything like that.
Yeah.
They looked after me. It was actually funny. The first time I went there, Mum's like, "Oh, good, you can do your own washing and cleaning for once." Get home, she's like, "How was it?" I said, "Oh, good. Eduardo has a maid."
There you go.
So there was that. There's the fact that I hate the cold, so I used to always go in June. So June, July, August. I went 3 years once without seeing winter.
Wow.
And just the food's nice, friendly people.
Just enjoyed it.
Yeah,
you're just enjoying it. That's great. And when you go there for let's say a month long training trip, how much are you training? Like how many days a week are you training? How many hours a day are you training?
I'd probably do 2 sessions a day.
Okay.
The most of them, I'd say 2 sessions a day. It kind of depends on which trip, because like the first trip, say, was carnival for half of it, and then when I come up to talking about like 2004, 2005, I was working there. So it depends on what trip.
Yeah. Okay. And then the BJJ scene back in Australia is we're talking early 2000s now, so it's getting a little bit bigger.
Yep.
Are you finding more competitions? Are you actively competing around this time as sort of purple belt, brown belt?
At purple belt, I tried to compete as much as possible. Like every tournament that was on, I'd compete.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd win, sometimes I'd lose first round. I would have had more matches at purple belt per month than any other belt. Just wherever it was, I'd go to it.
Yeah.
And just compete.
And what do you think the reason why you wanted to compete so badly was?
Probably just, I don't know. I just always competed. It was the idea of training and not competing. I've never understood.
Yeah. Okay.
And even now, I've got students that they just train. They don't want to compete, and
I
can't explain. I don't know what, and they give me the answer, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But I accept it. Like I don't force people to compete if they don't want to, but I think anyone who's in their early 20s, you really should be competing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to look back and think, well, why didn't I? And regret not competing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't help but be struck by your earlier story about Gordon taking you to all those competitions and competing, and 5 years of never winning. And you're just so accepting that. I mean, competition. It's a part of.
Yeah, I think maybe because I started winning them, I didn't want to stop. I enjoyed winning. I say winning's a habit.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
It just was something I think I'd gotten over that disappointment of losing. It was just like, I'm winning now, so I enjoy it. I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. That's cool. And then, so you get your brown belt eventually. That was in Brazil as well?
Yeah, I got all my belts in Brazil.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you're back there training again, getting your brown belt?
Yeah, in 2004. So 1998 we trained at Osvaldo Alves, and then 1999 when I went there, I don't know exactly what happened, but Eduardo said to me, "I don't train there anymore. We train in this other gym." And so I went there and stuff, and I met Andre Pedneris for the first time.
Yep.
And I remember I think he just fought Pat Miletich because he had the scarf and where they stopped the fight after a cut.
Yeah, right.
And he said, "Oh, we train here now."
Yeah,
Essentially just around the corner. So it was close to Sedge's house, and Sedge knew Andre from a long time ago. So
now Andre is one of the powerhouses of the MMA and BJJ world. What is he like? You know, and what's it like training under him?
he's really laid back and relaxed. Doesn't really get animated too much. Doesn't really say a lot, but what he says, you listen to.
Yeah, yeah. And training in Brazil. So you know, you're one of the handful that's training both in Australia and Brazil. What are the differences between, you know, training in Australia and training in Brazil? Cultural differences aside, is
Yeah.
it like, you know, a BJJ class is pretty much the same?
Yeah, I think they're the same. It more comes down, I guess, the instructor and how what they're like in terms of their discipline and how they expect the class to run. Like Brazil, I think they're a lot more laid back.
Yeah. Okay.
Just in Australia, just a bit more time concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a lot more relaxed.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. All right. And then you eventually get to your black belt. Do you remember what year that was? I did read it. Apologies.
2005.
2005, you get your black belt. Can you talk us through the sort of lead up to this, how the award went, and you know, who was there, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it was a Wednesday night. There's not much really to say. Like, it was just like a normal night at training. Like, there was a few. I remember there's a video, like a news team in there interviewing Andre or something, or a few of the fighters for something, because he always had top fighters coming through. I think Pedro Hizo was training there at the time. But essentially, it was just like a normal night. And basically, Andre would always just teach one position.
Yep.
And then you'd say, okay, you drill up to 5 minutes, and then it was just free rolling for an hour and a half.
Yep.
And often he'd teach the position, then he'd go away, and then he'd grab a belt off someone, and often he'd put a black belt on someone, take that brown, put it on someone else, take the purple that he just put the brown off, and kind of go down.
Oh, really? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so I've done a few times here. I did it last year to put a black on Wilco and gave his brown belt to Ryan.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's just like that. I just sit around, just chat nothing to Eduardo, and next thing you know, Rod, stand up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And
so I was actually registered, talking about competing every weekend. I was actually registered to compete that weekend in a brown belt tournament.
Ah, okay.
So I had to ring up and say I was got my black and, you know, get bumped up into the black belt division. So I literally had my first black belt tournament 4 days after getting graded.
How did that go?
I lost on point.
Yeah, right.
No pressure.
And how did it feel when you got that black belt? Like, was it a sense of, oh, finally I've achieved this? Oh no, I don't want this. This is, you know, I'm not ready for this.
No, it was a sense of like, finally, like it was something I'd always wanted. Like, I think I was the 11th Australian to get it. Okay. So, yeah, there was a sense of pride there. Yeah. Especially the way I did it, going overseas and kind of giving up my career. Because after the .com boom in 2000, I was in Brazil for September 11, 2001, watching the planes hit the Trade Center live. So then when I came back in 2001, there was no IT work. The .com market had crashed. So I went from the penthouse to the poorhouse.
Yeah. And
so for the next 4 years after that, I spent most of my career was a bouncer.
Okay.
So yeah, to the fact that I got my black belt, effectively giving up my computer programming career for a good 5-6 years.
Yep.
It's kind of got more significance because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were a bouncer. Where were you working at that time?
The Slip-In / Chinese Laundry. So for those who know Sydney, there's a pub on King and Kent Street called the Slip-In, and below that's a nightclub called the Chinese Laundry.
Yeah, right. And you work in the hectic hours, the early Saturdays?
Yeah, I used to work at a computer programmer just up the road. And when I started working at the Chinese Laundry, I could virtually see the office from where I was standing.
Oh, wow.
My hours were 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. earning a quarter of the money I used to earn sitting at the desk up, a few blocks up.
Oh, that's tough, man.
So
That's
that
tough.
hurt, but you know,
Yeah.
I
And
think
I
the
mean,
goal.
and tell us about, you've got a lifetime of martial arts under your belt when you're bouncing now. Is that giving you the confidence to do a job like that?
Yeah, it is. Like I often joke. I think that the best thing I wish I could make every purple belt do to get them round would be a year of bouncing.
Huh. Why do you say that?
I think too many purple belts get caught up in the world of sport, and if that's all you're focused on, you're missing out on an element of it. And we touched on I competed a lot of sports there, but I never threw a single punch the whole time I was bouncing. But obviously, I got into a few scraps. So you have to be able to control yourself, but at the same time have that confidence to say no, you can't come in. And I always explain it when people ask about punching and stuff. It's like, well, if you punch the guy and you knock them out and they fall on the concrete, you're in court.
Yeah, big time.
So you need to be able to control them like in jiu-jitsu and not throw a punch, control them, get them out the door.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, I think takes some skill. And I think it'll be a good test to get your brown or black belt. Go do that for a year.
Oh man, I think maybe you've just stumbled across an unorthodox new grading method at, at your jiu-jitsu academy.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the Chinese Laundry, 3 a.m. We're brown belt grading. Here we go. That's
I just threw the lights on. It's a bit dark.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Is that better?
That's really good, actually. No, thank you.
There's a light right up there. That's the problem. It's kind of,
And that's spotlighting it. It looks great.
yeah.
All right. So do you?
It's kind of like two different interviews, but
yeah.
you want to turn that off or on?
No, that's fine, mate. That's fine. So Rod, when you're bouncing, have you got any sort of? You said you got into a few scraps. Any like really crazy stories, crazy weapon being pulled out, or anything like that?
Nah, nothing like that. Nah, it was.
It's a while ago.
Haven't done it for like 10 years, so I'm sorry to let you down. No,
that's
more
all right.
about, I used to always grab the belt and just kind of, wedge them out the door. That was one of my favorite go-tos.
Yeah, okay. That's good. And were you ever, were you ever scared? You know what I mean? Were you in a confrontation where you were just scared?
Yeah, especially in the early day, like when you first start. You definitely have some times where you think, I wish I was computer programming again. But
Absolutely.
I suppose as you get used to it, and you know that a lot of the threats are just idle threats. They're not going to come back with their cousins and bash you and stuff. They just say that. You just, you grow and you adapt and you learn.
Yeah. No, it's certainly something that it's a job that I look at and I absolutely respect. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them you'll meet, they look like thugs, they look like meatheads. You're like, geez, they when it's 3 or 4 in the morning and the drunk guys and girls don't want to leave, they're dealing with a lot of society's worst,
Yeah.
And I have the greatest respect for people that do that job. Absolutely. And it doesn't.
I met a lot of good people doing it, and it was the right time. I think it was for me to do it. It allowed me to train a lot, to compete. Even if I finished work at 4 a.m, I still compete at 8 o'clock the next morning if there was a tour.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So Rod, tell us about when you competed in professional Shuto in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. How did you come across this and how was that experience?
So Larry was ranked number 1 in Shuto for a few years. So he was doing really well, and he was kind of like the Australian rep for Shuto. And so we had a few. Basically, there's A, B, and C. Okay. So C class, you fight with a headgear and shin guards.
Yep.
And then B and A are the same, except I think A is 3 rounds and B is 2 rounds.
Okay.
That's the only difference. So I had a few C class fights, won those, and then we're talking about moving up to B. And then one of Larry's, another friend of mine, was trying to get Larry's ret. He was supposed to fight in this event in Japan in Tokyo, and about a week before it, he pulled out. I think he had a shoulder injury or something. There was some injury he had to pull out.
Yeah.
And so Larry's like, oh, great. And then Alex Cook, another professional fighter at the time, said, send Rod. And Larry said, what are you doing on Sunday? I'm like,
No.
no. So literally next thing you know, I'm getting a blood test and find myself in Japan 3 days later.
going to a, what was it, a B class or an A class fight?
It was B. I never
A
fought
B
A.
class fight. Oh my God. Okay. And did you know anything about your opponent?
No, nothing.
Just that he was in Japan.
In Japan, and Larry wasn't even in my corner. It's the only fight I didn't have Larry in my corner for because he was actually off to the ADCC on the same weekend.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So talk, and is this a big show, or is it what type of MMA event is this from a Tokyo perspective?
Oh, I guess it'd be a mid-level show.
Okay.
Again,
was this your first time to Tokyo?
I went as a kid to Tokyo Disneyland when I was probably like 10 years old or something. So essentially, my first time.
Yeah, and how was the experience? Was it like what you expected?
It was good. Like, didn't really have time to see much of Tokyo. It was like, I think I arrived on the Friday, had to lose a few kilos, and then I fought Sunday and back Monday. It was good. Like, it was funny. Like, we got taken to this Japanese bathhouse to lose the weight. And so I'd never been in a bathhouse before. So I walked in there with my Speedos on and I found out pretty quickly you can't do that because this 50, 60-year-old man got out of this hot spa, stark naked, and implied to me that I had to be the same. So, I had to take the dogs off and, jump in the hot bath.
Man, I tell you what, for an Aussie guy, that's a bit of a culture shock. Like, no, you need to take it all off. We don't. Yeah, you're offending us by wearing Speedos. Well, maybe we shouldn't have been surprised. You're offending someone with your Speedos. Oh, crazy! And how did you go in the fight?
Lost on points. So
okay.
I think I won the first round. The second I would have lost, but it was one of those things. I was just underprepared and.
Mate, I don't think you can get more underprepared than that. 3 days travel halfway across the country, across the world, excuse me, to compete. Yeah. That's hectic. And then did you compete in judo again?
No, I never did actually. When I was in Brazil later, a few years later, part of the MMA team now, I was offered a couple of fights, but it was one of those things I wanted to, but there was always that lingering doubt of would my insurance cover me if there was a problem? Bloods, tests, you always, I don't know, I wasn't sure if I'll just focus on jiu-jitsu and then I'll talk about having a fight when I get back. But it just never happened again. I never retired. I just never really had the opportunity again. It was just, always just got put, I'll do it next year. And,
Yeah. And then life goes on.
Yeah.
Cool. And then from your career perspective, mate, did you fall back on your feet? Because you said you bounced for about 5 years, and then did the programming pick back up?
Yeah, 2006. So I was 2005, 6. I was in Rio most of the time, and I was working a bit over there, computer programming. And then I managed when I came back in 2006 to get a job working in town.
Okay.
And mum and dad at that stage had moved to La Perouse, which is in the east of Sydney.
Yep.
So, I managed to get a job pretty much back at just off help desk.
Yeah.
So one level back to the beginning, but I was able to resurrect the career and start my school on the side.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And talk to us about the school. How did that start?
So Gordon's gym was called Southern Cross Goshin-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. Yep. And he'd retired. He'd moved up to the other side of Sydney again, like the Northern Hills district. And so he kind of said, you can use the name Southern Cross. So that's where Southern Cross comes from.
Yeah.
And then I had to make a decision. Did I want to start a school in the eastern suburbs or in the Shire? And I always wanted to move back to the Shire. So I thought, okay, I'll start a school in the Shire. And that's what I did. I started the school down here.
And do you think you kind of run it, you got so much experience, Brazil, you got this experience with Larry, you've got your experience with Gordon. What do people get when they come to the school? Who are they seeing?
Mix of all my coaches. I think over the course, I've probably had a core set of coaches. And someone like John Donahue, for instance, John's probably the best technical coach I've ever had in terms of jiu-jitsu. Like no one, I was under John's tutelage for quite a few years, and I say no one's ever met his level of knowledge that I've ever met.
Yeah.
So a lot of credit to him, Larry, of course, and Andre. I mean,
And Andre, of course.
yeah, and but even then, like I don't even call. I suppose Andre is not really my coach in a sense. Like he's the one who graded me, but Vitor Shaolin is someone who I trained the most with in Brazil as a coach.
Yeah.
Shaolin and I trained on New Year's Eve at 1:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Just me and him. So so many influences that I guess it's hard to say.
Yeah. You know, it's again, I'm thinking about when you're describing Gordon, how he's taking these bits and pieces and sort of, using the best here, using the best there. You go to what you're describing, you go to your gym, and you don't get, this is how Gordon ran it, this is how Larry ran it. You're like, this is how I was raised. You know what I mean? That's what it sounds like.
I guess the thing from Gordon especially is Gordon never did it for money. Like, I remember as a kid when Gordon would drive these tournaments, Dad would try and give me money for petrol, and Gordon wouldn't take it. And it's the same thing. He wouldn't let me even buy him dinner.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky, I suppose, with the crisis we've just been through. Like because I've got I work 50 odd hours a week in computer programming. That I don't need the income that the gym gets. Like I was lucky to have a lot of members who kept the bills paid for this place, and so the business didn't go under, but I've never had to support myself from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I guess that means I can run it a bit differently. I don't have to listen to students that want me to do it a certain way, and that I can I'm running this because it's how I want to run it and it's how I enjoy it. And I can charge less and I can have a bigger school and do it because I enjoy it still.
That's fantastic. And the focus can be the jiu-jitsu, not am I going to be here tomorrow? It's I'm teaching. That's really profound. So talk to us talk to us about John Danaher. I did read that you trained, you had a lot of good things to say about him. How did you stumble across John and what was training like with John like?
So Larry met John, I'm not sure how, but I think in the late 90s, and I think I did a first seminar with John, I guess about 98, 99, when he was still a brown belt before he got his black. If you ever feel like you're under like explain just the way he distributes his weight, the way he's got control, the knowledge. He's so. People talk about John Danaher. You could swap John Danaher for John Danaher.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The level of knowledge. I've never met anyone with that much knowledge that he has in terms of grappling or jiu-jitsu.
And I haven't met him, but I tried to do a bit of research on him before the show because I saw that you trained with him. Really hard to find any information on him. He very, very quiet, seems like a very humble guy. There was one interview and it was just like someone managed to get an interview with John Danaher. Just seems like an incredibly sort of humble instructor.
Yeah, as we were talking about before this interview, I don't like doing things like this. I do them because I have to promote the school, but he's the same kind of thing. He doesn't like social media. Just kind of let the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So Rodney, you've had an amazing ability to train with some really talented people, both in Australia and abroad. Having had this journey now, when you reflect on BJJ Jiu-Jitsu in Australia, what's the current state, do you think, of Jiu-Jitsu in Australia? For example, if you really want to be the best, do you need to go overseas anymore, or is it quite established here in Australia?
No, I think you need to go overseas still. We haven't got the depth, and you need to experience different training partners and different situations.
Yeah.
Especially at a high level. I competed at the World Championships 4 or 5 times when they were still being held in Rio, plus Rio state tournaments and all that. So, and you're going to get a lot of different techniques thrown at you, and you got to put yourself in those positions. So, I think at this stage you still need to travel overseas.
So you still need to broaden your horizons, as in just train with so you're not just learning this Australianized jiu-jitsu, if you
That's
will.
right. And I have like an open door at my gym. I've never prohibited any of my students from training at other schools. And yeah, I encourage it. It's, I was never, Andre never stopped me from training at other schools when I was in Brazil. Yeah, you need to really, I think, learn different styles, different games.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. You hear about schools, and schools develop their own culture, and they develop their own. It's almost like ancestral is probably a too harsh of a word, but when people only train with each other, they can only beat each other. And it's only at competitions are they experiencing training with other people. So your logic makes absolute sense. If you want to be world class, if you want to be elite, you need to go train with everyone so that you can beat everyone. It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
When you think about the sort of journey you've had with BJJ, and from very humble beginnings to where you are now, what has changed in the BJJ world? Is it the same BJJ that you started with? What could you put your finger on what's different?
I think back 20 years ago when I started, we trained jiu-jitsu to fight. That's the main thing. Like, we never trained jiu-jitsu for a grappling tournament. It was always you train to fight. And there's nothing against that now. There's so much money in grappling that people are going to play for the rules.
Yeah.
But the idea of 20 years ago, I don't think I ever saw anyone pull guard. You look at the old worlds, everyone's standing up and they're fighting for the takedown. Nowadays, it's a race to see who can pull guard first. So that's changed the fact that jiu-jitsu and grappling's become a sport first, and I guess a fighting style second. I think that's the main difference. But it's just, the way it's gone. Yeah.
And from a professional side of your life, so you said you work quite a few hours a week now. Where has the programming taken off to since we last discussed it?
So I still do 40, 50 hours a week programming. Especially in the last 3 months with the COVID-19 being closed for 3 months. I've really, I guess, focused and shifted more towards that. I guess I took that on from Dad. I'm not the kind of guy that can go home at 5:30 in the afternoon and just watch the news and do nothing. It's just not me. I haven't gone. I hate going to the movies. It just drives me. I get bored. I just enjoy. I guess I like what I do. So it's creative and building systems and things like that. So.
That's interesting. Is there any correlation between this mathematical, intellectual analytical job, if you will, that you have and you've had your whole life with BJJ? Are the two related at all?
Not really. Like, honestly, if Larry's gym was here in the Southern Shire, I probably wouldn't have started the gym.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I never wanted to be a jiu-jitsu instructor. I never sorted it out. It was just, I fell into it because I started teaching when Larry was overseas. So I'd get to boxing work some nights and Larry was in Japan. And as a blue belt, if Eduardo wasn't there, I was the next highest grade. And so I was like, oh, right, you're teaching. Oh, am I?
Yeah.
And then after I lost my computer job after the 9/11, for those 5 years where I was bouncing, at night I was either training at Larry's or I was teaching. So I kind of fell into it. And when I came back in 2006, I wanted to move back to the Shire. So there's no school down here, so I'll start one.
Yeah. And it's taken off. It's quite popular. You've got your own black belts now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm proud of what I've built in the fact that I said it was never something I really prioritized 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the students I've got that have come through, and we've got some good ones on the way. The club's growing, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
And so you should be, mate. So Rodney, when you look back at this career you've had and your life in general, in and around MMA, BJJ, everything that you've done, what would you say were some of the highs? What were the real highs for you?
The high for me was 2009 when I won the ADCC qualifiers.
Yep.
I say that because in 2001, the ADCC submission wrestling trials here in Australia. I came second.
Okay.
2003, I didn't compete for some reason. 2005, I came second. 2007, I came second. So I come second 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's just that, I had to win that. You know, it was just that bucket list. I want to win it. And I finally, 2009, finally won it and got the trip to Barcelona to go 45 seconds with Marcelo Garcia.
And I mean, he's a big name, and he was a big name back then. I assume you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah.
And
the story of that was like we're lining up to get our badges or something, and there was this Canadian guy next to me, and he was a bit of a loudmouth, and he's like talking and stuff. He goes, "Hey, Rodney, let's get a photo together, man. Let's get a photo." So he tapped the guy in front of me to take a photo, and that, of course, was Marcelo Garcia. So here's Marcelo Garcia taking a photo of me and this Canadian guy.
What a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, he was so friendly, so nice, except for like the match. He changed from this nice, friendly guy to just look in his eye was like, "You're gone."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's rewind. So winning the road to that as a black belt to get to it. Do you remember how many guys did you have to go against in that competition?
The qualifiers?
Yeah, the qualifiers.
I think I had to win 4.
Okay. And they were all tough matches to get to the end.
Yeah, Dave Hart. Dave and I would have had about 10 matches against each other.
Yeah, right.
Over the years. 2007, also George Soteropoulos, who of course, UFC. Yep. I'd have to go back and look at the names.
Yeah.
Essentially, Dave Hart and I had a few battles. George and I had a few battles. Good time.
And if that was the high, mate, what were your lows when you sort of look back?
I suppose lows. It's easy to look at the tournament, the ones that I lost. I suppose. I don't even think I have that many regrets. Like I would have done many things differently.
Yeah.
Maybe not gone out so much on the weekends before tournaments.
Yeah.
But I was young.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think the same thing. I think back to my early days. What would I have done differently? I wish I didn't go partying so much. But everything leads to where you are now. And if you're happy with where you are now, maybe everything happened for a reason. So
yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. I get the no regrets mentality. That makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah, like you look and you think, I should have done things differently to business, or I should have. I don't know. It's hard. I don't think I say publicly either. There's a few other things that you kind of would like to change, but
sure.
It's all experience.
Yeah.
So like when Robson Moore was out here last time, 3 or 4 years ago, I was talking to him about it. He's gone, "Don't worry, mate. All us have regrets of the same thing."
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. And when you look forward, Rod, into the future, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for BJJ? What's next for the gym? Where do you see it all happening?
I'm not retired yet. I'll still compete a couple more times. I'd like to compete at least a couple of times a year. It's just hard with work. Long term, I guess I've got 2 sons. They're 6 and 8. So they're like me. They're not sporty. So, but they don't have a choice. They're going to learn jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
So it's to kind of encourage them and bribe them to get them on the mat.
Yep.
And I'd like to grade 100 black belts.
Wow.
So
okay.
I've done 5.
Yeah.
And make sure that the standard's high too. I don't want to dip my standards. One thing that people tell me from visitors come to my school and they say that the standard is high.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that stays that way.
That's fantastic. What a
when Andre Penhouse graded his 100th, I think it was Henan Benal.
Yeah.
Serves me right. He was his 100th. And I thought that's a good goal, 100 black belts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. What a really cool goal.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And where do you see BJJ going? The sport, the self-defense, the martial arts?
I think it'll keep growing. I think there might be some real change in the next few years. I think whether it's the advantages that people are always complaining about, or they're going to mix it up a bit. I don't know. I think the rules have been so standard for so long, but I can see some changes coming there, especially as wrestling becomes more and more dominant in MMA. They might look at rewarding takedowns more. I'd certainly like to say that. I wish there was more reward on takedowns.
Yeah, okay.
But I think as a sport, it'll keep growing, definitely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Rod, that has been such an enjoyable 60 minutes for myself personally. I'm being very selfish here. What an awesome story, mate. And some of the names that you just mentioned, Jesus, the Bas Rutens, the Marcelo Garcias, just these George Soteropoulos, these people who are, I look up to. I've looking up to them for so long ago, but that's you. It's part of your history and part of your background. So, mate, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm just absolutely so impressed by your humbleness, your background, your upbringing, this passion that to drive, to train, and just to compete, constantly competing like it's nothing. I'm on the side with your students that are like, I don't want to compete, and I love your concept with why it's such a normal part of life.
Yeah.
And looking forward that I really look forward to seeing who the 100th black belt that you grade is. What an amazing goal that you have, mate. So thank you so much for volunteering to being on the show with us. I've gotten so much out of this, and hopefully listeners, you have too. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, ladies and gents, of Behind the Black Belt with Rodney Ellis. Now, if you are in Sydney, and if you're especially around the Shire area and you're looking for somewhere to train, then check out Southern Cross Jiu-Jitsu Academy. You can find their website at www.scjja.com. You can find them on all the social medias, on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find them at SCJJA on both those platforms. And you can find them on Instagram at SCJJ_Academy, and also look for them on Tumblr as well. They are everywhere. So get out there and find out more about this academy. And again, Rodney, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for being on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure for myself, mate. Have you got any final words before we wrap up?
No, mate. Thanks for having me. And please pop in when you're in Sydney.
Oh, absolutely. That is 100% something that I'm going to do. I'm very much looking forward to it. So thanks again, Rodney. And ladies and gents, until next time, this is Rich signing off for Behind the Black Belt.
Behind the Black Belt is proud to support veteran grappling. Veteran grappling is using the grappling arts to improve the lives of military veterans and first responders. Visit www.veterangrappling.com to learn about scholarship opportunities and more.
Join our community on Facebook and our website at www.behindtheblackbelt.com. Behind the Black Belt is a TDP Studios production. Behind the Black Belt is copyright of Richard Thapthing Thong and TDP Studios. The music used in this episode is Rocking Forward by X Take Rux and is used under an Attribution International 4.0 license.